Yeah.
Like I feel.
Yeah, I saw a comedy bit about that the other day and how you would punch better with your dominant hand and your non-dominant hand kind of turns into,
A
one of
limp
these.
wristed.
Yeah, yeah. Not tough guy stuff. But you know what is tough guy stuff? Leadership. That's a solid segue, right?
Yeah.
So we're talking about in this episode, leadership. What is leadership? What does it mean to you? What does it look like? What does it look like in the Bible? What does it look like on the battlefield? What does it look like in the workplace? Who are leaders? What is a leader? There are good leaders, there are bad leaders. And there are plenty of examples of either to be found all over the place. You can think right now, you're listening to this, you're thinking about that crummy boss you had, or that great boss that you had, or that you currently have, or whatever. And you're thinking that's what leadership is, or that's what leadership is not. But it breaks down to the more molecular level. You can look at leading your home, leading your family. You're the first one at a red light. You are the leader in terms of how fast we all get out of there. You're getting on or off of an airplane. You're the leader, and everybody's waiting on you and looking at you. So we're in leadership roles all the time, whether we like it or not. And they're either good or they're bad. I say they're good or bad. We're either good at it or we're bad at it. And there's not much in between. Crummy leadership is ineffective leadership. What does Jocko say? Jocko says there are no bad teams, only bad leaders. General Patton had a similar quote. There are no bad armies, only bad generals, or I forget what it was exactly. But yeah, there's all sorts of things that come to mind in terms of leadership. We can define a leader as fundamentally it's somebody who influences the thoughts and actions of others to achieve a specific outcome. So we can look at that as a general or an officer leading an army. We can look at that again as something so simple as leading your house or being the first one at a red light. What you do influences the thoughts and actions of others, especially if you don't go when the light turns green, right? You're influencing thoughts and maybe some actions. But that's what we're looking at in terms of a leadership. We always look at things here through a scriptural lens, a biblical lens, and scripture differentiates clearly between righteous and wicked leaders, and we see that those words used to describe these people over and over and over in scripture. Right, he was a righteous king, a righteous leader. He was a wicked ruler, a wicked king. Good leaders in that aspect are first and foremost followers of God, and they derive their values and strength from him, which is what we like to think, all of us are or would be in that moment. And then bad leaders often exclude God from their daily lives, and they trust in human resources, and they selfishly pursue their own desires. And I don't mean human resources like the guy down the hall that calls you in when you send your buddies a dank meme from the toilet on your break. Like human resources as in our own understanding, which we're cautioned against leaning on. That said, when you think about a leadership, and I mentioned, Jocko Willink a minute ago, and he's big on what they call extreme ownership. And that is credit and blame, right? And not even so much credit, but definitely blame. You're in charge, so you get the blame for everything that goes wrong, because if things go wrong, it means you probably didn't prepare your people the right way. And if you prepared your people the right way and they still didn't do the right things, then it's still on you because you didn't put the right people in place. And that's tough, right? That's extreme ownership, though, in a nutshell, because it's still your fault even when things go bad. In his book, Extreme Ownership, whatever. I just think it's funny we're saying extreme ownership again. He describes a battle that his guys were in Fallujah in Iraq, and they had what they call a blue on blue incident, which meant, accidentally good guys kill other good guys because you're not away in a firefight and there's bullets whizzing and mortars falling and You lose track of who's who sometimes, and they're talking about this, in debrief, and they're going, well, whose fault was it that this happened? And guys are standing up and going, my fault. It was my fault. I shouldn't have been here, or I should have been there, or I should have been doing this. But it ultimately comes back to the leader, because he's the one that set all that up and, was supposed to be responsible for lines of communication and all these things, putting the right people in the right places at the right times. And so the leader, which was Jocko, who's on the SEAL team, it came back on him. He was the leader, right? So that's extreme ownership, is taking blame for the bad stuff that goes wrong. But then even when everything goes right, you're still looking at your team and how they supported you, and that you did put the right people in the right place, and then they executed. So it's, there's a lot of credit to go around. But when you look at it that way, there's less blame to go around. It's a little more thinly spread, because you're like, well, I get the blame no matter what, and then I only get part of the credit. Well, that's part of it. But we look at so many things, and we think about blame and credit, and how much credit do you really need when things go right if you were doing it for the right reasons anyway. So that's just another way to swallow it, I guess, is that it ain't about you, especially in terms of combat or leading a church or something with huge major implications. We look at biblically, and we're kind of going back and forth here between, some military examples and some biblical examples. Again, you can think about business people who've done one thing or another to make stuff go well. But in terms of biblical examples, we think about Peter, right? Let's put Peter out there. We always bang on Peter because he's always saying something dumb, except that without Peter asking what we frame as a dumb question here and there, like, we wouldn't know the things that we know. So kudos to Peter for being the first man through the wall. They say the first man through the wall always gets bloody. Well, he did, and Jesus called him Satan a couple times, and Peter had to learn his place. But we see Peter deny Christ and doing other, asking questions. What about this and what about that? And Jesus having to straighten him out. But Peter, the turning point for him is in John 21. Jesus transforms Peter by saying, do you love me? Emphatically, like over and over and over again. He keeps asking Peter, do you love me? Do you love me? And Peter's going, yes, I love you. I absolutely 100% love you. This is before Peter left him hanging and denied him 3 times. But what he comes back around to is, if you love me, feed my sheep. So he empowers Peter there. Jesus, as the leader, is empowering Peter to feed my sheep. Jesus did not make Peter the Pope. You got to stop that. But he empowered Peter to carry on this mission, because Jesus knew he wouldn't be on earth very much longer at this point. Things are winding down, and he's about to go to the cross and be crucified, and of course resurrected again. But he demonstrates leadership here. Peter's fear gets replaced by confidence right after he's empowered. And he demonstrates leadership by prioritizing followers over tradition, like accepting the first Gentile believers and mixing, Jew and Gentile together in terms of who's following Christ. So that's where we see Peter's turning point, and he becomes a leader. And he still makes mistakes after this. And Jocko Willink still makes mistakes, and your pastor still makes mistakes, but that doesn't make them less of a leader. It just means that they're human, and sometimes human people do human things. But this past week, I was at a retreat, they called it. A retrograde was a vocabulary word that we used as it pertained to leadership and a battle. So we were in South Carolina, just outside of Greenville, and they put us in a van and took us to the Cowpens battlefield up there. There was a major Revolutionary War battle fought in South Carolina. And Tango, you and I were talking about this off air. I didn't realize how many key pivotal battles there were in the South during, and it made sense after I really thought about it, but I didn't realize how many key battles there were in the South during the Revolution.
Yeah, that was kind of an early on thing.
Yeah.
You just happen to be in one of the spots where kind of the bigger things went down.
Yeah.
That were turning points.
Yeah. So you had General Dan Morgan, who was an older guy, an experienced guy, and he was in charge of his dudes in the Continental Army and some militia. And then you had the French guy, French sounding, I forget how you even say the guy's name. Tarleton was the other general. That's his last name. Whatever. Anyway, look him up. Bad luck, Cowpens, Tarleton. So we're looking at two generals here and their styles of leadership. And Tarleton was known for shooting guys as they ran away, sending the cavalry after them and just cutting them down with sabers, as they were giving up and running away. But the night before this battle, Tarleton had marched his men through the night, and they were tired, right? And they had come over, across the ocean, a lot of them, and floated on a boat for weeks at a time or however long that took. And they were in what amounted to a different country at this point. And they were fighting a war, and, all the things were going against them, except that they were the Redcoats, the greatest army ever assembled at the time, all the resources, all the people. So Tarleton is banking on that. We got the Redcoats. We're going to get them. I know they're over there, and we're just going to walk up to them and shoot them. Easy, right? Because you're the Redcoats. But while Tarleton is marching his men through the night, Morgan is on the other side in his encampment. And in these encampments, in the old battlefield-style encampments, you've got guys in tents here and there, and they're kind of, they're spread out, and everybody's got their own little campfire going, and 2 or 3 guys gathered together, and you're cleaning your gun or whatever it is you do to get ready for battle in 1780. But Morgan's going campfire to campfire, and he's sitting down with these guys, and he's going, hey, this is, tomorrow's a big deal. And he's kind of measuring everybody out. But for the general to go around and visit campfires and talk to these men one-on-one was a huge deal. Generals just didn't do that. They stood in the back and they gave orders, and their lieutenants got the orders out, and it either worked or it didn't. But Morgan's doing this with these guys, and he's motivating them, and he's kind of taking an assessment of where everybody's at mentally and how strong they're going to be or might not be. And he had a number of militia guys. So let's frame what militia was at this point in the world. We think of militia now as a bunch of guys who go out and put on camouflage and hang out for the weekend and shoot guns and skin a pig or whatever. Back then, the militia might have meant the Redcoats came marching through my family farm, and so I'm going to war for the day. Like, for the day. Like, you might have a militia guy for a day or two, and then when the army, the war and the army move on, they go back home because they got, fields to tend or whatever. They weren't members of the army. And they were known for shooting once and running away. That was just a thing. They weren't trained. They could shoot. Everybody could shoot then because that was the way of life. Now, I say everybody could shoot. These guns weren't fantastic, which is why they would line up and just try to pepper the other team because your gun was not accurate. But everybody knew how to do that. And reloading those old guns was like a thing. Sometimes it was a minute and a half. If you're not a professional, it might take you 2 or 3 minutes to reload your rifle because things become exponentially harder when somebody's shooting at you. So he goes to these militia guys and he's like, hey, I need you to give me 2 shots tomorrow. 2 shots and run away. Run for your life. So these militia guys pony up, right? And they're like, okay, 2 shots. Giving you 2 shots. So the next day in the battle, Tarleton is marching up a bit of a hill. He's in a funnel, and he's gotten to this point where he's in this cow field, which is why it's called cow pens, and he's in between 2 big sections of timber, and he's stuck in there. And if he stays there, then the Continental Army can just come and shoot him, and there's nothing he can do about it. But he needs to get out of there so he can spread his army out and fight the way they fought then. So he decides to go ahead and do that. Well, at the top of the little rise there's some sharpshooters out there, a few guys that just start picking off his officers. But he knows if I can get to the top of the hill, I can whip those militia guys. They'll run. I can just a couple shots. That's all it's going to take from my side. They'll only get 1 and they run. So he's surprised when they shoot once and don't run away. And then they shoot again. It's called a volley. I learned this. A volley, right? Because you're all standing there together and you shoot and then I shoot and then like whatever. So he gets 2 shots out of his militia, and then they run. The militia scatters. Some of them fall back into the other ranks or whatever, and they're still in the fight. But they did what Tarleton expected them to do, which is run, which emboldened the redcoats. Like they're running now. We got them. So the redcoats press on, and what they didn't know was that just over the crest of the hill was 900 Continental Army soldiers. So in football terms, this was a screen pass. Let them in. Let them in. Don't block them. Let them in. We'll throw the ball right over the top of their head, and it'll go for 60. So they let them in. Morgan's militia fires 2 shots, and then they let the redcoats in. The redcoats go up the hill and get slaughtered. America, we win. But that's 2 examples of leadership, right? And one of them was a guy who sat down on a log at a campfire with a dude who might or might not have been in the war for a day and a half. He's just in it because they're close to his family farm. And then there's the other guy that's going, hey, we're the redcoats, and we're just going to win because of who we are. But so that's 2 examples of leadership there. One of them is humility and probably some counsel, right? He's talking to these guys, and he's asking them to give him a second shot, but it might have been, hey, can you give me 2 shots? Are you capable of that? Can you reload your gun in, less than a minute? But he's probably listening to other people and making this decision where you've got a guy like Tarleton. Tarleton was young. He was 26, I think, and was a general in the British Army, which was almost unheard of at that point. But he was young and he was aggressive, and like I said, he was just super mean. So the 2 different styles of leadership, one of them perfectly played into the hands of the other. So you kind of got to have your finger on the pulse in terms of what your people are capable of and maximizing strengths and weaknesses. And Morgan did that. He maximized the strength and the weakness of the militia at the same time. And it played right into his army's hands and set up this great strategic win. When so many times the Continental Army was outgunned or outfunded or whatever it was, because they were the redcoats on the other side. But that's a practical, battlefield example of good and bad leadership. And, again, we can think of other examples like David in the Bible. David was the king, right? They went and found this guy when they wanted a king, and we got to make this guy the king. So they picked the smallest guy from the smallest tribe because he was probably the bravest dude out there. And we saw that when he killed the lion and the bear and Goliath and all this fun stuff. But we see David stumble too with things like, issues like Bathsheba. And if you're reading in the Psalms, and David seems bipolar because, in the 23rd Psalm, everything is just fantastic. And we're walking through the valley of the shadow of death and not fearing any evil. But if you go back one before that and read the 22nd Psalm, David is like, oh, Lord, how long will you, when are you going to help me out and throw me a bone? But you can see David riding this roller coaster up and down in terms of where he felt like he was at with God and whether or not God was providing for him and how patient David was going to be waiting for that. But we look at him and go, that's a man after God's own heart. So in your type of leadership, and again, you are in some form of leadership somewhere, what kind of style are you talking about? Are you waiting on God? Are you listening to your counsel, people around you? In America here, we love our football, right? I made a football reference a minute ago, and we think about a head coach. Well, what does a head coach do? Well, a bunch of them don't do much at all on Saturdays except argue the spot with the referee and ask for holding calls, while the offensive and defensive coordinators are the ones actually calling the schemes and the plays. So the coaches got to trust those guys, right? And who are the coordinators trusting? Well, they're trusting their receiver coach to have gotten his guys ready to go in and play that game. And the defensive coordinator is hoping that the D-line coach has got his guys on the lookout for a screen pass, and they're not going to get suckered in and have the ball dumped over their head. But, again, that's another example of a different type of leadership. But you are some kind of leader somewhere. And it might be, some hobby that you have. You playing rec league basketball or whatever. There are people that, either look up to you or they don't. And that's based on how you act and how you present yourself. And not everybody is a general. Not everybody's a polished leader, but we all set some kind of example somewhere. Tango, you with me? I was about to throw it to you.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm reading something.
No, you're good. You always got some research going on the side over there. You're in a management position now. Grown-up world, right?
I am.
So, how do you view yourself in terms of strategies and things that you use?
So, when I first kind of took on a leadership role, it was a fun learning experience, and wildly enough, a mutual friend of ours kind of pushed me to kind of maybe read some of these Jocko books. Extreme Ownership. I did read that one.
Yeah.
But one of them that actually helped me was a class that someone you went to high school with. We won't say names. I'll name him afterwards.
Okay.
He had kind of hinted to me in a previous job, hey, he gave me a book to read, and I let it sit there, and then I finally read it. Wildly enough, I kind of took a lot of that to heart, which is I want to lead from within the trenches with you. I'm not going to lead from above. I want to be in it with you the whole time.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of easier to lead when you know what the heck's going on and when you know what your guys are up to.
Yeah.
And you know the process, you know every part of it, you know everything that can go wrong. That's where I'm at with it. Again, there was another great person who we worked with, who we went to church with, who gave me the best advice ever. And it's the wildest thing is good soldiers march on full bellies.
Yeah.
Which means, hey, it may not be a pizza party. It's going to be something better. It's when I have to show up at the end of the month, everybody's getting breakfast. Because if I got to be there on a weekend, everybody's getting breakfast.
There you go.
Because it kind of wins people over easier. So it's all about what little wins you can produce.
Right.
Because that's going to drive that morale further. And your team's going to be willing to do more for you. If they see you in the trenches with them, they're going to say, okay, this dude's in it.
Yeah.
He's not just barking orders. He's willing to get out here and do it. So that's kind of where my strategy and stuff is, and I get yelled at by some Italians sometimes because they're like, your job is not to be in the trenches, on the field with them. And I was like, but hear me out. I get better results.
Yeah. Why would you not? It's
a culture clash. It's the same thing. It's Americans. That's kind of how we view it. Is like we want to be in there. It kind of reminds me. It's the funniest scene from The Longest Yard where Burt Reynolds is like wearing the jersey for the team. And it's like,
this is the remake, right?
The remake with Adam Sandler.
Yeah, okay.
And like, he's wearing the jersey. He's like, I'm willing to go in.
Yeah,
but like, it's like, no. You're too old for this. But you got the mentality to go in and be your head coach. You want to wear the jersey, dang it.
Yeah. Which, not unrelated, but Burt Reynolds was a fantastic football player in his day.
Right?
Yeah.
That was the original movie. That was why they chose him.
Right, yeah. But yeah, it makes a difference. And I remember my time in public school, and you can go back a couple episodes and get all my thoughts on that. I've gotten a lot of praise on that episode from both sides. Anyway, but I remember policy and things coming down from people who had obviously either never been in a classroom or had been a long time since they'd been in a classroom. And this is the way we got to do things. And I'm like, bro, that's not the kid that we're working with anymore. I don't know what you guys were doing in 1987, but that's not how this goes now. But so many times that happens. A guy gets disconnected from the workforce because he's in an office on the second floor, right? While he's watching the factory, the assembly line go downstairs, and he's just, all he sees is numbers on a page and not the people and what it's going to require.
Yeah, that's a fun one, is when you have those guys who are kind of disconnected and all they look at is a screen that gives
Yeah.
them numbers.
Yeah.
Then you get to answer questions based off of numbers, and it's like, oh, the, I struggle with that.
Mm-hmm.
I have my own struggles with that, and I'm like, oh, well, this and this and this, and so a lot of it comes back to accountability. When like my team succeeds, we succeed, but when we fail, accountability's on
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take 100% accountability.
Yeah.
And that's just part of it, and that's being the leaders. Sometimes you got to get your butt chewed.
Yeah.
Because you failed.
Yeah. It is. It's part of it. And sometimes you get chewed because you fell on the sword rather than it was actually something, just because you do it a different way, because you're in the trenches when your higher ups think you probably shouldn't be in the trenches or whatever. It is what it is. It either works or it doesn't.
Yeah, and I'm going to always fall on the sword, so to speak, but
Yeah.
I'll go out on my shield, absolutely.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Oh, that's a great
We're
analogy.
going to go defending it, but we're going out.
Yeah.
It may be a sword through you, but we're going out
Yeah.
with a shield down.
So it's just got to come down to whatever your leadership role is. It's got to come down to the cause. And I heard a great expression over this last week and all this leadership training that I was doing was that you need to be the CEO of your seat. So you feel like you're the lowest guy on the totem pole at your company, but you are the CEO of your job, whatever your job is. If you're a guy that stands on the assembly line and pulls a lever all day, you're the CEO of that position. And that's the mentality that we should take, especially as believers, right? Because we're supposed to do everything for the glory and honor of God. So that's the mindset we ought to approach. If we're the guy riding on the back of a garbage truck, God bless them. Man, speaking of school, I said the words, stay in school. You don't want to ride a garbage truck. Well, guess who made more money than I did? The guy on that garbage truck. Anyway, nothing wrong with riding a garbage truck. Be the CEO of guys that ride on the back of a garbage truck. But that's the mentality we got to have. And we got to have that mentality about the cause. Whatever the cause is, your company, your family, your church, your platoon, your division, if you're in a military unit, whatever. Be the leader, right? You prioritize people over power because a bad boss will smash the morale, and then you're into this turnover cycle and you can't keep good employees and your company goes in the toilet all because you wanted that power as opposed to feeding your guys breakfast on Saturday after you required them to be there when they would normally be off. Or you're a Tarleton that marched your guys through the night and then got them slaughtered at the top of the hill. So it could go both ways.
Yeah. When you say power, it's kind of a funny thing. Something that comes to mind is you have those guys who say, well, they'll take credit when it's something good, but as soon as something bad happens, it's fingers pointing and yelling the whole time. It wasn't me. It was these idiots out here.
Right.
Whoa. No. You led.
You hired those idiots.
You're taking accountability for it, dude.
Yeah.
So that real quick shows me who's going to be a good leader, who's going to be a bad leader.
Yeah.
Are you willing to take that hit?
Right. Yeah. It is about who's going to step up and take the hit. But your people see that. We got this plan in place, and it's either going to work or it's not, and then it doesn't for whatever reason. And the guy at the top's going, "Hey, that wasn't on me, because Jimmy and Joe down there were supposed to be doing X, Y, and Z." Well, did you tell Jimmy and Joe they were supposed to be doing that? Or maybe Jimmy and Joe in the opposite role and they should have been in different. But it's just on you as a leader. But if they see you crawfish like that and you're like, "Oh no, it wasn't not my fault. It could be my fault." They know who you are. They work for you every day. Yeah. And they're not going to trust you. And then eventually they're going to go to the other tire factory and start working for those guys where they're appreciated and have full bellies.
Yeah. One of the other things quality-wise that, like, humbly I would like to brag on is, like, I think extremely quick on my toes.
Mm-hmm.
It is, okay, plan A went wrong. Plan B's already in place. Let's rock and roll with it.
Yeah.
Even when I was doing the production side at church, something could go wrong and it was done instantly.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we have a Band-Aid for it to get by right now, but there's already a plan in place to fix it
Yeah.
immediately. And it's one of those things where when you do the job and you know it, you know how to react quickly, precisely, and efficiently
Right.
to take care of problems.
Yeah.
So that's one of those things when I think leadership. I think, can he think on his toes, or is he going to struggle as soon as he gets over the hill and say, oh crap, they're 900, what do I do now?
Yeah. Yeah.
No. You should have been prepared for that and been like, something's not right here.
Yeah.
You got to always have that thought in the back of your head.
Well, we accredit this quote to 100 different people, but somebody said once upon a time, everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the face, until things start going sideways, until there's a budget shortfall, or somebody calls in for work, calls out of work for the day, or machine breaks down, whatever happens. What now?
Yeah. That first punch in the face, what are you going to do?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And is it crack the whip and make everybody work double time, or is it take a second and start asking people who know, like, hey, you run this machine every day. It's not working now. We had 3 machines. Now we've only got 2. Is there a way we can, get it? Yeah, right. You maximize the other 2 machines and whatever it is. But good leaders listen, because they do prioritize their people over power. True servant leaders don't view followers as tools, right? I mean, followers, you can say employees, you could say soldiers, whatever, but they're not just tools, right? They're a charge that has been given to them by God, for better or worse, right? People in leadership are put there by God, and we understand that, whether it's government or your boss. It's you are where you are because He put you there. But good ones don't look at their people or their followers as means to an end, but as a team to work together.
Exactly. Wildly enough, in the year of our Lord 2026, there's this cool thing going on now where it's no longer corrective actions and like you're the boss. It's now called coachings.
Yeah.
Because you're now the coach of this team. So that's where you kind of build on it more, because now it's you're coaching them. So you're the guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's where we can link it back to football all day. That coach is going to get credit for that win, but he's also going to get credit for that loss. But
yeah.
All the great coaches, we can name them for days, but they've figured out how it works.
Yeah. So in terms of coach, we've talked about football. Let's switch over to basketball. Give basketball some love. Here's a good example. In the 1960s, the Boston Celtics won 8 championships in 10 years, which is the most golden run any sports team I think has ever had. And I forget who it was. It might have been John Havlicek. Talked about during that time, guys get old in the NBA over the course of 10 years. You come in the league at 21, 22, and now you're in you're 30, and you're starting to get old in terms of pro athletes. But he said what he realized was that a guy would get old and he would start getting less minutes, and some other guy would start getting more minutes. The team would bring a new guy in, a young guy. And he said what he realized was that he was training his replacement. And all these guys, as they were phasing them out off the roster, they had been bringing up the guy behind them. You're training your replacement.
That's a Ron Kanzler quote.
That's true, yeah.
He always used to tell us, hey, man, your job is to train your replacement.
Yeah.
Always be training your replacement.
Right.
And so that's a lot of Ron Kanzler right there. And that goes back to, hey, yeah, I may be getting older.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and start identifying a succession plan.
Right.
Let's build this next guy. Because if the next guy is already kind of primed to be a leader, and like acting is that, as you said, be the leader of your independent positions, be the CEO of that.
Yeah.
As soon as time comes up and they got to take that on, it's boom, ready to go.
Yeah. So PJ Broom he beats that same drum. I remember the first class we ever had at Emperor City Grappling Club. He's a big talker. He talks a lot during class and before and after. PJ just talk. You've seen him on the podcast. He talks a bunch. But there's a group of us in the room, and he was not talking to me when he said this, but he might have been talking to my daughter when he said, I'm training my replacement right now. I don't know which one of you it is, But there's some killers in the room, right? There's these young blue and purple belts that are not going to be blue and purple belts forever. They're moving up through the ranks. But he's like, I'm training my replacement in here, and I understand that, and I want you to be better than me. So he's working on this legacy, right? So either one day, one of these young, hungry killers is going to be the head coach at Emperor City Grappling Club, or they're going to go and start their own thing, and they're going to replace him that way in the jiu-jitsu community, you know, because he's a young guy, but he's not going to be young forever. And he understands that. So he knows, if I want this thing that we're part of to grow, then I've got to be willing to let the young elephants in the tent at some point, you know. And so he's kind of beats the same drum as Ron and Red Auerbach, as it turns out. Auerbach, how do you say his name? Great basketball coach. But it's a fantastic principle, right? It's like a call to mentorship, where we strive to transfer our legacy onto somebody else. Because we leave this life one day, right? And best case scenario is your kids remember you. If you live long enough to see their kids, they remember you. And then after that, their kids are not going to remember you, you know, for the most part. So you're gone in terms of who remembers you on this earth, but what are you leaving behind? Well, it's your legacy, and it's not even your name or your face, but it's a way that you brought somebody on, who brings somebody else on, and you start this thing. Certainly in ministry and in leadership, that's what we want to do. We still talk about, you know, Jonathan Edwards and Jan Hus and all these people, that the reformers that got this ball rolling. We talked about Peter and all these, you know, David, thousands of years ago. But if they didn't do the things that they did, we wouldn't have the things that we have now. So it's important for us to remember that and pass those things along. We got lots of time. I'm not going to keep going much longer, but I'm looking to check our time. We got 220 minutes left. I'm not going to beat this drum all night. Closing thoughts. By forgetting self and focusing on the followers, any leader can take the first step toward the model of servant leadership. Forgetting self. Not just like putting self on the back burner, but forgetting self. Remember the cause, the overall, your house, your company, your church, your military unit, your business. That's the greater cause, right? And the legacy that we're going to leave. You got anything else?
No, I think you've kind of hit all of it right on the nail. So,
good deal. Well, that's where we're going to jump off. Thank you guys for watching. Y'all been around for 40-ish minutes now. We certainly appreciate every single one of you. We thrive when you subscribe. I learned that lately. I'm trying to find a cool catchphrase to end shows with. Just subscribe, please, to our YouTube, our socials, wherever you listen to us, if you're just listening to the audio on this. But we're grateful for each and every one of you. You are why we do this. Hope to educate, inspire, any or all of the above. God bless you. We love you. See you next time.